What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Win Daily Sports first episode of What the Puck. Stanley Cup playoffs have officially dropped, and the boys are ready. We have Allen, we have Vecchio, we got some DFS, we got some bets, and we're ready to dive right in. So the playoffs started last night. Washington, big win in overtime. Nick Dowd, OT winner. We had 3 games so far today. The third one's still going on between Florida and Tampa. Kucherov has 2 goals in his first game back. We had an OT game with the Penguins and the Islanders as New York scored. Kyle Palmieri, 2 goals. And then in the Wild Golden Knights, an absolute goalie battle between Marc-Andre Fleury and Cam Talbot. And it ended up 1-0 for the Wild with a Joel Eriksson-Ek winner. And boys, what do we think of the games today?
Well, I mean, to start with Boston and Washington, I think the first thing I want to mention off the bat is that Craig Anderson's not carrying any team to a Stanley Cup. And, he had some decent seasons with Ottawa. He's now 40 years old. I don't see it. I mean, I feel bad. He was their third stringer. If they still had Henrik Lundqvist, if the unfortunate incident didn't happen, they maybe you could make an argument that he could go all the way. But with Craig Anderson, I don't see Washington having a long-term success, especially against a team like Boston, they're really built for the playoffs. They're very gritty. They like to play the puck hard, and when you're in the playoffs and the penalties aren't really called as often as they usually are, that kind of style of play really bodes well. So. Yeah, there's going to be a lot to discuss, but Washington, Boston, right off the bat.
When you look at you mentioned Anderson, but I did see that this morning Samsonov did practice. He's off the COVID list. So they said if he looked good in practice, and he probably would get the start on Monday night.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because Boston also could potentially go to Swayman at some point if Tuukka Rask kind of falters a little bit. So it's kind of a matchup where both teams kind of their goaltending isn't solidified. And it's not like Vanacek was necessarily their number one, that's our guy, because they kind of went into the season with Samsonov until he had the whole COVID thing with him, Kuznetsov, and the other Russian guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, in that vein, Vanacek, he would get the job done, right? He wasn't their reliable starter. You're absolutely right. It was Samsonov every day of the week, but going into the playoffs, you do need to have depth, and especially in the goalie position, depth is super important.
Yeah, a lot of these teams are rolling. They're 1A, 1B. They're not necessarily starter, backup, besides really Tampa Bay and Winnipeg, and maybe Edmonton to some extent. But yeah, definitely. So cool. So let's roll right into Monday's slate of games. So basically how this is going to work is we're kind of going to preview the games. We're going to go late at night once the game's usually finished, and then we're going to preview the next days of games. We're going to break down the DFS slate and also the betting slate and kind of talk about some futures, some good value they see on the board. We're going to let those two guys really focus on the DFS and me go with the betting. So without further ado, let's dive right in. You guys want to go with the game, the non-playoff game?
Sure, Matt.
No, I'm totally kidding.
No, we're not talking about that one.
Absolutely not. The Canada division's dead. All right, we're gonna go into the
first. That's hurtful, man. Come on.
All right, we're gonna go in the division.
We did. At least I'm very proud of our team.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a big Austin Matthews fan, so I'm also proud. But yeah, so let's dive right in there. So game 1 tomorrow, or actually the first game on the slate, but game 2 technically is going to be the Bruins Capitals. You guys can go right into the DFS. We got Bruins on the money line is -129, Caps are +110 right now.
Yeah, I think the goal situation that we talked about with the Capitals is I'm not playing probably a goalie in this game. I don't know what Allen's but on DraftKings, I mean, Rask is 8,100 against Washington. I'm not too confident at that price to play him. And we don't know who's going to be in net for Washington. Like we said, Samsonov practiced on Sunday, so there's a chance he gets in. We'll have to wait and see. We probably won't find out until about 7 p.m. on Monday when they come out for warm-ups. But I don't think I really want to play a goalie in this game, because if it's Anderson, you definitely don't want to play him, and Samsonov hasn't played in I don't even know how long. So to play either one of them just doesn't make sense. Samsonov played on May 1st, so he was around, but before that he hadn't played in 2 weeks. So the goalies in this game on DraftKings, especially at their prices, 8,100 for Rask and then 7,900 for whoever starts for Washington. I'd rather play offense in this game.
What when you guys look at goalie prices, what do you see as value? So when you're looking at it, is like 8,000 kind of that's like a pretty expensive goaltender on the slate?
8,000 to me, at least on FanDuel, is kind of like starting to push it a little bit. The only way I would pick a goalie that is like well above there is usually if they're like very, very talented and they're expected to face a lot of shots. So you kind of look at how prone the other team is to shooting, and you also look at how many goals they usually score. So you're able to kind of get an average on how a goalie's going to do. And with that, you can usually find some decent value because as far as I can tell, like FanDuel's really basing their goalie prices off of the odds. So if they feel like one team is going to do better than the other, then they're probably just going to price the goalie higher more often than not. Like I think this one is an exception. Like Craig Anderson is priced higher than Tuukka Rask. There's no real world situation where that would ever be the case, but they probably felt like Washington had a better chance of winning this game when they released the slate. So.
And so with that, when you guys were looking at goalies, you mentioned how you look at the goals kind of in the shots. Are you looking at it like their average over the season? Are you kind of looking at what the Vegas lines are for like an over-under as like a 6.5 means like a lot of goals, so you probably don't want to pick a goalie in that game? Are those some things that kind of go through your mind?
The over-under at first thing I do that, yeah. And like, when you look at playoffs, like today's slate, projected goal totals, you can get those, and nobody had more than 2.9. Vegas is the highest 2.9 on the 3 games today. So it's the playoffs. It's not a lot of goals.
Right.
Our goalies are going to be, you got to get the right goalie. Like I had Fleury today in one build, and he had almost 19 points on DK, which is great because his price was 8,200. I don't normally pay up that for goaltending. Myself, I pay down. More times than not, you can find a goalie on DraftKings in the mid to high 7Ks, and they're not going to kill you. But like Alan said, you want to look at what how many shots they're going to face. Like tomorrow night, we're going to get to that game later, but Grubauer against St. Louis. St. Louis doesn't shoot the puck a lot, and he's 8,400. Now they're not. They can be higher. I've seen 85 and 86 for Grubauer this season. I don't want to pay that price for him in the game where maybe he faced 25 shots against St. Louis and he gives up a goal or two. He's dead. Your lineup's dead because he's going to have 15, 30, maybe 13 points if he's lucky, and that's not what you want from the goalie. You need more than that. So there's other spots to look at, and I like to look at the shots on goal they face, and if teams, a sieve on defense and gives up a ton of shots, and that's where I'll go with my goaltenders. And sometimes you find the cheaper goaltenders because the teams are really not that good. You don't get the win bonus necessarily, so that's sometimes you want to take into account. But it's the shots on goal and look at how many they give up and how many the team they're playing takes.
So as far as like offense or defense, is there any kind of players, or would this be a game where you want to stack a line? Kind of, how do you see this game playing out as far as the other positions?
So for me, I think you could definitely get away with the 2 top lines on this team. Personally, for me, I might stay away from both of them. If I'm going to touch this game, I'm going to look at more of the value. Like I really love Washington's third line. Oshie, Matt knows I'm a really big Tom Wilson fan. So he played very, very well last game. The guy's a brawler, but he's also a hockey player. And as we mentioned earlier, that style of grit and determination, it's very translatable to the playoffs. So I really do like that third line for Boston. Their second line is just a secret weapon because everyone is concerned about this top line, and their top line does score. I'm not going to pretend like Pasternak and Bergeron and Marchand don't score goals. Of course they do, but they get some really nice secondary scoring from that second line.
Yeah, I'm in the same right there with you, lockstep, because the Boston line is going to be expensive. You're going to pay up for Boston. You're going to have to pay. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of salary you're going to use, and I would think I'd rather pay up for the Colorado because their depth isn't really as strong. And though it has been the season, but I think Boston's depth with their second line, like you said, with Hall, Krejci, and Smith, I'd rather pay for them. Or even, you pick 2 of them and put maybe with a Mike Riley or Brendan Carlo on defense, someone who's just, a cheaper defenseman and get you exposure to the Bruins, especially in a game where you could see Craig Anderson in goal. Even though they won on Saturday, I don't know if Craig Anderson's going to be what you want to. Yeah, that's a goal I want to target. And yeah, I agree with you on the Capitals third line too. But I can't agree on the Tom Wilson thing. But I'm a Penguin fan, obviously, so I have to hate everything Capitals. So.
Fair enough. But also on defense, they like Carlson kind of runs their entire defense. But there are some value plays for Washington on defense. It's basically just Schultz. But on Boston side, you have
too.
Orlov too. But yeah, for Boston, they have a little bit more defensive plays. So like that you have, as you mentioned, Mike Riley, you have Matt Grzelcyk who like runs their top line. And then you have Charlie McAvoy, who even though he's not like a power play guy, he still gets a lot of minutes and he can get like a lot of those peripheral stats, like the shots and the block shots. And he can pair well with the top line as well. But if I were to look for any defense on Boston, it would probably be Grzelcyk, and for Washington, I'd probably go Schultz.
Yeah, and it is interesting too, right? That's kind of frustrating when they don't announce their goalies until maybe 20 minutes before. Some people have no idea until you see that first goalie off for warmups, and that's kind of when it gets announced. And that's kind of tough as you guys try and navigate your slates for the game. You kind of could change if you see Samsonov in as opposed to Anderson, where you're targeting Anderson. You might not want to target Samsonov as much.
Absolutely.
I mean, tomorrow night, Monday night, I probably wouldn't mind targeting Samsonov because he has
just because he's a little rusty. Yeah.
So it wouldn't tomorrow on Monday night. It's not going to change any of my capital plays because either way, Anderson's not very good and Samsonov hasn't played in 2 weeks, so he might have some rust. So, but going forward, yeah, if Samsonov is playing and Vanacek is out for any length of time, once he gets his wheels under him, then maybe we see go game by game. But for Monday night, I think I would be fine with. Whoever they put out there, I still like the Boston players.
Got it. And then just a couple value plays that I see on the board from the betting side. So one of the plays I really liked game one that didn't hit but almost hit was the over 5.5 because you're getting plus money on it. For game one, it was plus 120. Right now it's hovering around plus 116. You can actually get plus 120 on William Hill or BetMGM. The Capitals were one of the best teams on the over. They're the best playoff team. They hit their overs more than any other playoff team. And the Bruins in the last month of the season were top 5 in their overs as well, even though throughout the whole season they were bottom 5 team, and I think they were 15th out of the 16 playoff teams. But with the addition of Hall really driving that second line, Bruins have been scoring some goals, and they haven't been as stingy on defense because they added a guy like Mike Riley who's aggressive and goes up in the play, but then also gets caught a little bit defensively. So that's a play I like. And then also the Bruins series price. It dropped. It started around minus 140 before game one, and now it's all the way up to plus 120 after their game one loss. And if you think about it, the Bruins really just needed to split the first 2 games, and you couldn't really realistically expect them to win games 1 and games 2 in Washington. So the fact that they lost game 1 and the line moved that much is I'm kind of surprised by that because I don't necessarily see it as a trend that they played terrible. Washington did a good job in game 1, but I don't necessarily think that they're going to play. Boston's going to pick it up a little bit for game 2.
Those are some excellent points. I don't know about you guys. I'm ready to go on to the second game. I think we've beaten the first one to death, but the second game that I see is Carolina versus Nashville. To me, it's a little bit of a mismatch here. Like in Carolina, they've been decent now for a little bit, and it's really weird because they don't have tremendous depth, but their players play well at the right times. And I think they've had a lot of success, especially with that top liner, the modified top line where they have Teravainen and Aho and Svechnikov. Even if they're not all on the same line, they're all finding their own individual success. So I really like that top line, and also you pair him with Dougie Hamilton. You almost have to, and then Nichas Trocheck on the second line. That they also kind of go. Trocheck and Dougie also go together with that top line power play, and there's a lot of value with those teams. And again, since I consider this one a mismatch, this might be where my goalie comes from with Nedeljkovic.
This is where it gets interesting because I'm going to be the complete opposite of you. I think Nashville wins this series, so I mean I'm high on Carolina. There's always an upset in the first round somewhere.
Always.
Nashville has just been – they were so bad early on that everyone was like, oh, well, they're going to have a crappy season. They're done. They came on. They got that 4 seed. I don't know. Carolina's goaltending – I worry about Carolina's goaltending. Like I said, Nedeljkovic, I mean, he's new to the league. It's his first real year, and he he's good. He's been great this season, but he hasn't played in the playoffs before. Saros and Rinne. Saros hasn't experienced, but Rinne's there, and he has. I trust the Nashville goaltending more. And if to get to the DFS side of it, if you're going to play, any big GPPs, any deep, large field GPPs, I really like. I believe Saros is going to get the start from Nashville. They haven't said anything.
100%. 100%. It's going to be Saros.
I love Saros. He's priced 7,500 on DraftKings. He's been really, he's been better at home, obviously, than on the road. But he comes in. They won 3 of his last 4. He's given up just 4 goals in the 3 wins. They don't give up a ton of shots, but Carolina does shoot the puck enough to where like a 3-2 game, Saros could kill it in value and get that 35 save bonus on DraftKings, especially if Carolina's down, they're going to start peppering them more because they got to come back, or if it's a tight game or an overtime game. That's one thing I have to pay attention to is when a series is tight like this, you get overtime games, you get 3 overtimes, 2 double overtime, triple overtime. That goal is making 60 saves. So if it's a one-sided series, today we had 2 overtime games, so you're gonna have a lot of tight games. But I think if you're playing like a large field GPP, Saros is my goalie. But Nedeljkovic, if you're playing cash games or a single entry, he's probably the safest play because I'm saying I want Nashville. I think Nashville wins the series, but I don't know how confident I am in that.
And like Nashville does have some excellent plays as well. Like I think Tolvanen's having an excellent rookie season. Obviously, Roman Josi, he's leading the pack there. And if we're talking about defensive depth, Nashville is defensive depth. They got Ekholm, they got Ellis. Like they have just crazy defensive depth, but they have sometimes these like gaps where it just seems like they're just all liabilities. So they're very, very talented offensive defensemen, but sometimes they just leave you wanting a little more behind.
Yeah, and when you bring up too the point on Saros, right? He kind of carried them to the playoffs. They kind of rode his coattails, and he played incredible throughout that stretch of the season in like March and April. So I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But to your point too, when you're saying this is a close series, this is probably, I think, like the third biggest discrepancy in series prices between the Hurricanes and the Predators. The Hurricanes were about minus 250, where the Predators are about plus 200. But you're also right to the point where there's always upsets in the first round, right? So it's kind of being ahead of the curve a little bit and kind of guessing which upsets you think are going to hit, because a lot of people are just playing favorites and they ride with the numbers and they really think that those heavy favorites are going to win when they don't realize that, NHL playoffs upsets could happen at any given time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and my one play on this series, I did a whole series. So the cool thing with series is you can bet series spreads. So I took the Hurricanes at minus 1.5, which was minus 115 odds, because I think they're going to win the series. I do think that Nashville, for whatever reason, I'm a Devils fan, so John Hines used to be our coach, and I do not trust him at all to coach a hockey team. And he proved that in the beginning of the season, and then had a goaltender just get red hot and carry them to the playoffs. So, I trust Rod Brindamore. I think he's an incredible coach, and I think coaching will get this done. I also think that the goaltending is interesting because I don't even think Nedeljkovic is going to be for sure the starter. I feel like Mrazek's probably going to start game 1, in my opinion.
Even if he does, he's a solid option. I don't mind Mrazek.
They're both solid, and even Reimer's like probably the best third string goalie in the league this year.
As a Leafs fan, I don't disagree.
they got goalie depth for days.
He's got a special place in my heart.
I have a Leafs Reimer jersey, Alan.
Wow.
So. Yeah.
You know what? He was very special. He was like our own guy, and when we saw him go, it was a bit heartbreaking, but it was part of that cleaning house era. But also, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes Carolina likes to break up that top line, and it looks, at least for now, like they have, because Fetch is on that third line. I really like some of Stahl's play. Like, he's getting a little bit older and a little bit more inconsistent, but that you always have that. And also in the second line, I mentioned how you have Nichas and Trocheck. I believe Fogel's also on that line. So if you want to go with the full line stack, I think there's a lot of value there. So if, again, you're playing those GPPs and you need that thing that's going to make you a little bit different, Carolina too, not a horrible option.
I prefer Nietzsche on the second line over Fogle only because you don't see a lot of power plays in the playoffs, but we did see them calling some penalties today, especially in the Penguins game and the Islander game.
And there's a lot in this game now too, in the Panthers Lightning.
Oh, okay, yeah, I haven't seen much of that game yet tonight, but Nikic is in the power play. Fogle doesn't play power play minutes. It's about maximizing the minutes, so you want to try the guys who are going to get the most ice time. And if he's playing on the power play, Nikic, he's probably better suited for to be used. I mean, his salary is a big difference. You know, it's a $1,800 difference between Fogle and Nikic. So,
Nikic had a great year too.
If you can fit him in, yeah, he's definitely had a breakout season. So if you could fit him in, that's great. You know, and in all honesty, if you need a cheap guy from Carolina, Jesper Fast, he's in the power play. He's on that second power play unit, and he's 2,500 on DraftKings. So, you know, you got a min-price guy playing power play minutes in the playoffs. You know, even if you know, not necessarily as a one-off, because I don't like playing one-offs on cheap. If I'm playing a one-off, I want a guy who's a high price, who's going to get me a goal and assist. You know, not a hope he gets the minutes and gets you a goal. I want to have a guy like McKinnon as a one-off, or tomorrow night, Marchand, someone like that, who's more of a guarantee than a cheap guy. But if you want to play a Carolina stack, yeah, Jesper Fast, I would prefer over like a Warren Fogle, just because he gets the power play minutes.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, cool. I think that wraps up game 2. And then we have one more late game.
The big boy.
We have game 1 between the St. Louis Blues and the Colorado Avalanche. By far the biggest series discrepancy price. Avs were coming in around minus 350. Blues were coming in about plus 280. And then tomorrow's game of 2, the Avs were minus 265 on the money line. Blues plus 220 on the puck or on the money line. And then even the puck line, I mean, Avs minus 1.5 is plus 104. And Blues just to cover a goal and a half is minus 124. We have a question in the chat about Jordan Binnington, if they think he'd be worth it since the Avs should get 30 plus shots. I'll let you guys take that and kind of go into what you guys are thinking on the DFS slate.
If you've read my stuff all season or you've been in Discord, I don't play Jordan Binnington. Jordan Binnington is the most overrated goalie in the history of the NHL. He rode the coattails of a team that was done to a Stanley Cup and to a contract. St. Louis doesn't give up a ton of shots. But I know Colorado shoots the puck a lot. They also take a lot of penalties. They're one of the most penalized teams in the league. Colorado's power play, yeah, they could give you 35, 40 shots. They're probably going to put 5 goals past them on Monday night. So the better goalie in St. Louis is actually Billy Husso, and that came out.
I don't think you're
out of the mouth of Jake Allen.
I don't think you are recommending Billy
Husso might be one of the worst backups.
I'm not recommending playing him.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying.
Goalie
he hates Binnington so much that he'd prefer Husso.
I can't agree with that.
Don't play Husso.
Well, I'm going to go with what Jake Allen said, who used to play with the Blues. He said Billy Husso is one of the best goalies he's ever seen live, and he said he's the better of the two. So he's a goalie in the NHL, so I'll take his word for it.
I will give you that Binnington.
He's going to start game 1 against for the Canadiens, maybe.
Well, yeah. Maybe, but
shout Maple Leafs on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I will give you that Binnington has had a complete drop off in quality this season.
Tough year for Ben.
It's it's like a true fall from grace. So I would personally stay away, especially because I'm really targeting Colorado in this game.
Yeah.
Like I think that their top line is, especially in cash, is just unavoidable. So I don't know if I would recommend going with Binnington.
Yeah, I agree with you about Colorado too. That's if you're playing cash games, single entry, that's you have to go and get some exposure to that top line, especially
Would you take McKinnon or would you ride Landeskog or Rantanen to kind of hope McKinnon doesn't score as much, because McKinnon's probably the most expensive, I would assume.
Yes, I was going to say McKinnon.
Go ahead, Alan.
I was going to say McKinnon is the most expensive, but I think that yes, you kind of have to. You can also go off the board a little bit here. Like we know that Cale Makar is going to play with that top line, so you can do some really interesting stuff. Whether it's a winger, defenseman, center defenseman, it allows a lot of leeway, especially on FanDuel where you have 2 flex spots. You can make some interesting lines happen if you go with like a 2-man, because they are very expensive, and if you go for 3 of them or like even the full line, like you're gonna run out of money fast.
So how about those second and third line guys like a Kadri or a Burakovsky or even a Tyson Jost? Would you like those guys?
On DraftKings, McKinnon and Rantanen are $300 difference. I'll find the $300 to get McKinnon in over Rantanen.
Right.
Because it's 86 and 8,300 on. But Landeskog is interesting. He's only 6,800 on DraftKings, so you could use him. I definitely like the idea of using him because he is so cheap. He's $2,000 less than McKinnon. So if you can't get up to McKinnon, I don't mind a Landeskog one-off at 6,800 because he's going to play with McKinnon. He's going to play with Rantanen. If you want to pay up for Boston or Washington, then Landeskog is a little bit of salary savings at that price on DraftKings.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But as you were mentioning, Keith, Burakovsky, he's just been red hot towards the end of the season. And I think that you could definitely ride him out here. I'll definitely, for GPP plays, I think Burakovsky is an excellent selection. On FanDuel, his prices hasn't even raised that much considering how he's been playing. So, Kadri, I haven't been as impressed with, which is kind of relieving as a Leafs fan, considering that he makes me regret us trading him every single time I see him in a playoff game. So
you don't like Alex Kerfoot?
Not as much as I like Kadri.
And you don't like Tyson Barrie, not even on the Leafs anymore?
No, that was a horrible tenure with the Leafs. I'm glad that he's found success again in the West, but yeah,
playing with Connor McDavid will do that to you.
Exactly.
Usually helps.
And then as far as goaltenders go, you mentioned about Binnington. How about Grubauer as someone for the Blues, for example? Their leading goal scorer, David Perron's on the COVID list, so he's not even going to be in tomorrow. So what do we make of Grubauer? I mean, he's probably the most expensive goalie on the slate, but he's probably going to put up the best numbers. So I guess it's finding that value.
If you're playing cash games of single entry, then yeah, go put Grubauer in with a couple of Avs, and he'll get you the win, and you'll get points. If you're playing in GPPs, then I say look for either the goalie in either Carolina, whoever starts with Carolina or Nashville. If you want to get real risky, I mean, you could put Binnington in, he's going to face the shots. So you just have to hope that Colorado maybe scores 1 or 2 goals and it's a 2-1 game. But I do like playing the Blues because no one's going to play them because everyone's going to play the Avs. Everyone's going to play Grubauer. I don't mind playing the Blues. We just have to wait and see who plays with who. With Perron on the COVID list, they're going to have to shake up the lines because right now, Braden Shen with Bozak and Kyrou, I don't really love that one. I don't know who's replacing Perron on the first line with O'Reilly. I would assume you get a guy like a Mike Hoffman or Robert Thomas.
I was thinking Robert Thomas, maybe.
Get some time up, mix the lines around. But Hoffman's already on the first power play unit with O'Reilly. So, I mean, if you wanted to do something like that with maybe a Torrey Krug, or if you want to pay down on defense, I really don't trust the Blues cheap D-men. I'd rather pay down somewhere else on D. But Krug and Falk. I mean, Justin Falk's been really
that's
well
what I was going to say. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
you could take a flyer on Justin Falk for sure.
Now, if you can play. Justin Falk. He's semi-expensive, but he's playing the second power play with all the cheap guys. So if you wanted to pay up and stack the Boston-Washington game, a guy like Falk, he's expensive, 5,500, but he's playing on the second power play unit with an Ivan Barbashev was 2,700. Robert Thomas, we just talked about as someone we like. He's cheap, 2,600. So you can pay. I don't mind paying Falk's price if you're going to play him with Thomas and Barbashev, especially if Thomas moves up into the top 6 line unit. Then he's a good play, and that's you can get inexpensive Blues for tournaments. But if you're playing cash or a single entry, then maybe stay away from the Blues just because you're going to hope you have to get a goal. And maximize it, get a goal and assist. If you're playing Blues, no one-offs. Stack the Blues or stay away.
Absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, I kind of agree. When we're looking at Grubauer, though, I don't know if I trust him in cash more than I trust Nedeljkovic. For Grubauer, I'm looking at somebody who, as you said, he's probably not going to face a lot of shots. If that guy gives up 1 or 2, that could be dangerous. That could destroy a line. So I know that he'll probably be the chalk goalie. And
that's my thought process is he's chalk. So if you're playing cash, probably
Sometimes you gotta eat
75%
the
people
chalk.
have
And
them.
it's the playoffs. He's likely to give up
Exactly.
a goal or two. Like that's not like that. It could be like a 5-3 game. It wouldn't surprise me.
But you're right. It is chalk, but that just screams bad chalk to me because if he gives up a goal or two, he's not going to face the amount of shots to make up the difference, right? So I would rather go with a Nedeljkovic. But yeah, so for cash, I think we're pretty much clear. You got to go with one of the two there. And you got to have some of those top line Colorado pieces. That's for sure. So if somebody was gonna ask me, oh, like I'm starting my cash build, what do I start with? I say you pick one of those two goalies and you start with that Colorado top line, pick your favorite pieces, and then build from there.
Yep,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And then from the betting, go ahead.
No, I'm saying you look at cash, like you said, Alan. You start with Colorado first. Make sure you fit them, and then you build around them. You want to pay up and just do McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar or something like that, and then build in after that. You can find, we talked about inexpensive pieces in Carolina, Washington and Boston both have some inexpensive pieces that you can fit in and make that work. What'd you say?
Tom Wilson.
No. Obviously you can play Tom Wilson, but he's probably going to put another goal because that's what he does all of a sudden, score goals after beat people up.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, Keith, you were going to talk about the betting perspective for this game.
Yeah, so I'm saying not for this game. So my biggest future so far this year would be Vegas to win the cup. I took it beginning of the year like plus 700. I got a few units on that, but that pays out like 27 units. So in order to hedge it a little bit, what I did is I took the Avs to make it out of the West. They were about plus 120 to make it out of the West, so I put 2 units on that because I think it's going to be one of those two teams. Even though Vegas did lose today, which obviously isn't ideal, I still think they rally and they get once Pacioretty comes back in that lineup, I think they'll start rolling a little bit. Even though Minnesota actually has beaten them 5 out of 8 times, and they've only had 1 regulation loss at 8 games, which kind of scares me a little bit. But as far as the Avalanche go, I mean, I just don't see you could also bet them to win the series 4-0 or 4-1, and you make money on both because they're like plus 300 to win 4-0 and plus 250 to win 4-1, which I think are the two most likely scenarios. I don't think St. Louis really stands a chance in this series, and a lot of the betting models even have the Avalanche minus 600 or better to win the series. So if you even want to take the Avs at minus 330, there's actually a lot of betting models that would say that has value somehow. And
Ryan O'Reilly opened his mouth and gave them bulletin board material by saying that they're going to beat the Avs. So
exactly.
that automatically means you're in trouble.
Game 7. We're going to be down to the wire in this one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, good first show, fellas. Anything to wrap it up before we finish off here?
We got a long playoffs ahead of us, so I think the best advice I'd have is pick your slates. Make sure that you're fully comfortable with your lines. Playoffs are very, very finicky. It's different than regular NHL, so it takes a little bit of adaptation. But once you get the hang of it, it does become a little bit easier. So I would recommend that you start slow and then build up to where you're comfortable again for like a regular season volume.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned just the other day, it's a completely different animal. And in all honesty, like if you play like say $20 a night, just on regular season, maybe knock it down to 10 for playoffs because it's a little more difficult. Teams play a much tighter defensive game. They're not more wide open to try and get goals and fly up and down the ice. You're going to see teams because you could one bad play, you lose a game. That could be the series. So, in regular season game, you take those chances. And in a playoff game, you don't take as many chances. But in the playoffs, that's why you don't want bottom 6 forwards, third D pair, that kind of value. You want to try and find the value on the top 6 because teams, as the games goes on, the series go on, they'll roll their top 6 over and over on forwards and their top 2 D pairs. So try and stay with that instead of looking to the third and fourth lines for depth, especially later in the series when it gets a little bit more tighter. Early on, game 1, game 2, you could find you're okay using some of the bottom guys, but I would say you get to games 4, 5, 6, and the teams get a little bit tighter, and they want to trust their top 6 more than anything else. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd say the same from the betting perspective too. I was, betting maybe 2, 3, 4 games a night between over-unders, puck lines, money lines, but now what I did is I kind of attacked it from a future perspective, took a lot of series, a lot of cup favorites, and then kind of just mixed in an individual game here and there. Kind of, you can't really, because for the example, you look at the Bruins game, right? Bruins were favored game 1, they lost. You look at the Penguins today, Penguins were favored game 1, they lost. So there could be value if you're taking a lot of underdogs. Obviously, Minnesota, another underdog, won today. But yeah, I think it's just being hesitant with the expectations from the playoffs, just because, like they mentioned, it's a completely different animal.
Absolutely.
But yeah, all right, great first
Awesome.
episode, boys. What the puck? We'll see everyone tomorrow. Hope everyone listens to take some advice, throws in some bets. You can follow the boys on WinDailySports.com. Join, read the Discord. Boys are posting in there every day their lines, and really great stuff in there. If anyone has any other sports too, you can follow along throughout everything. We'll be here for the playoffs, so everyone have a good night, and let's win some money.
Absolutely. Let's get it.
Good night, everyone.